Welcome to a very special edition of the Numbers Game. I, of course, am Cynthia Frelund, and I am joined by one of the smartest football, basketball, one of the smartest data science minds that I have ever met. And that's saying a lot because I have met a lot of people in this space. This is he's not going to say it, but Ed Feng, who does everything Power Rank. So there's a newsletter. It comes out on Saturdays. It's called The Power Rank. You can follow him on Twitter at The Power Rank. We call him Dr. Ed. I'm going to call you Dr. Ed because you have earned that Stanford PhD. So I'm going to say, you don't have to. You can be so humble to not say it, but I am going to. You need to check out some of the stuff he's been doing around the college football playoff, including the 12 days of Christmas. The 12 days of college football playoffs around Christmas. That's the theme. So, of course, I'm going to mention that. But, Ed, thank you so much for being here. What have I missed? What do people need to know?
Cynthia, thank you so much for having me on. I think you got everything. I think it's the newsletter has been going on for years, 5 Nugget Saturday. And then, more recently, I've been trying to do some videos on social media. Interesting. I actually got a text from someone I hadn't heard from in a long time saying, "Hey, I saw your video on X." I was like, "Oh, well, that's a good sign."
That's a great sign. And you've written books. Truly, I think people don't understand. We were just talking about this before we got started, like how hard it is to distill all this information, especially when, you're looking at all of the college football is so confusing. I'm a draft person, so I get to pop in kind of after the fact and really start looking at the draft. But with all these changes, the portal, my goodness, like I love NIL. It's fine. I'm whatever. It's just bringing something into light that was already going on. But the transfer portal is bananas to me. And I don't know how Bill Belichick's going to like that, but that's a different pod for a different day. But anyways, so college football playoff totally changed this season. I love all of your stuff about like the seedings. It's so funny, but we'll get to that in a second. But ultimately, more of the good players are playing longer. So that means better chances for us as more of an NFL-focused crowd to pop in and ask you to kind of just give us a little bit of the navigation points. Like everyone's something to play for. Like when you model this out, like what are you looking at this year?
Well, when I model this out, I'm just grateful that the transfer portal doesn't happen in September. So we do have players that have been on the team for the full year. And even with the chaos of players leaving, we don't really care about Penn State's backup quarterback and how they're going to do against SMU. So luckily, we have what we have in college football, which is 12, 13 games of data. And that's pretty robust. And I usually go, I trust my model for what I'm seeing in these college football playoff games. Like this should reflect the personnel that they're going to put out on the field in the playoff. When you look at the other bowl games, you need to be a little bit more cautious. And I've been looking through some of them, and you got to see if half the team went to the transfer portal, and half the team can go to the transfer portal, but yet play in the bowl game. So there's so many things to kind of check out there. So, when I do have bowl predictions up on my site, but you take those are those are more suggestions. I feel pretty good about my college football numbers heading into the playoffs, and looking forward to talking about those.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dig in. I love your seeding stuff. And by the way, the thing you didn't say about your newsletters and all of your stuff that's really great are the visualizations. So if you're more of you need a picture to learn person than, a bunch of numbers, which, we're numbers people, but I like pictures too. Your data visualizations, incredible. And even during March Madness, which, we'll talk about in a second, but like you can click on like the team and it shows you all it's incredible. So his data visualizations, A+, like my favorite. But jumping into these college football, especially this first round, like seeding is what it is. Who's your favorite to win the whole thing?
Right now, my favorite to win is Oregon. I have them at about 25%. I think that's a little bit too high. It is actually, let's dig into my model a little bit. It tends to be a little bit more, it is more reactive to what has happened more recently. It is something that reacts based on the data and the market data from the last game. And that's interesting for Oregon because we kind of doubted this team at the beginning of the season. Only beat Boise State by a field goal, had some issues with I think Idaho or Idaho State. They didn't look good coming out of the gate, but they're undefeated, and they actually played some teams in the Big Ten, unlike other people like Indiana. But they had some really tough games, and they beat some really good teams. this is a really good team. When I look at my numbers, I think that 25% is a little bit of an overestimate, but they should be the favorite. They are the favorite in the market. And this is a really good team that should be there at the end.
And the seating for them was pretty A plus. So just
Right.
saying, like sometimes it is what it is. Like we can't change that, but your path is what it is. So okay, so if you had to, let's take Oregon aside. If you had more of a dark horse or some value in the market, a pick that could potentially, I mean, it is a 1 game sample size. Anything can happen. Is there a pick that you like that's a potential kind of non-Oregon pick?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just to be clear, like I haven't bet an Oregon future, and I probably won't. But a team that I do like, who I feel is underrated, is Penn State. The entire narrative is James Franklin can't win the big one.
Hmm.
Yahoo Sports is tweeting out he's, I think, 1-18 against top 5 teams. I don't know what that means. I have not checked that, but there is this narrative, right? And I just don't think that the underlying details of that team match that narrative. This is a really good football team. They lost to Ohio State. They lost to Oregon, but it was one score. They were in both those games until the very last second. And look, this is a really good football team on both sides of the ball. Drew Aller got zero love for the Heisman, but when you look at his passing efficiency, it's been excellent. They're just, for example, I take yards per pass attempt and I adjust for strength of schedule and the strength. These adjustments are really why you should follow my stuff, because they account for just the difference between the Big Ten and the MAC. And when you make those adjustments, Penn State's fourth in the nation in adjusted yards per pass attempt, right? This is a guy that got criticized last year for not going deep that much, like a very conservative offense. Well, I mean, that offense has been really good. It is hilarious to me that I live in Ann Arbor, and I have actually become like one of the biggest apologists for James Franklin and a little bit Ryan Day. But these guys get a lot of criticism,
Are you not
and rightfully
allowed?
so, because of the amount of money that they make. But
Do you get like kicked out of skeepers? Like, are you not allowed in scorekeepers anymore because you're like, I like James Franklin, I like Ryan
I just
Day?
try to I just try to hide, when I'm in scorekeepers.
There's no badge they
It's
make you
been a
wear,
while.
like when you go into Rick's.
Right. No, but look, these coaches, look, you can't win the big one until you actually win the big one. And a lot of the narrative around James Franklin sounds very similar to the narrative around Jim Harbaugh and Ohio State before 2021. And he was able to rip off 3 in a row. And so I think everything's a little bit screwy about Penn State. I think they're potentially in a different class than SMU. SMU is a very good football team, had a very good season, and I don't want to take too much away from them. But this Penn State team is definitively a top 5 team, if not a top 2 team in the nation. I like them -8.5 at home against SMU, and I would nibble a little bit at their futures. You can get +550 on FanDuel right now. My numbers give about a 17% chance that they win this playoff. And
Okay,
Cynthia,
so
ever since the middle of the season, it was very clear that there were no dominant football teams, college football teams in the nation this year. The rating on all these top teams has really fallen since the beginning of the year. And that's when I started thinking, like, this playoff is going to be chaotic. And the team that kept coming to mind is like Penn State, right? Again, because of this narrative, they haven't won anything. They never made a 14 playoff, right? But this is a team in a year where teams like Georgia just aren't playing as well as you think they would. And now they don't have a quarterback, which definitely changes things. You could get a surprise winner. It won't be Boise State or Arizona State, but it could be a Penn State.
why won't it be Boise State or Arizona State?
Because I don't think those teams are very good. Boise State is particularly low in my numbers, and it's not because they haven't been impressive in the game results, but it's been really the strength of competition. 5 of those, 5 of those wins that they had are teams ranked 100 or worse. Like the Mountain West was just really bad. So yeah, okay, they had a good result against Oregon when Oregon wasn't playing that well,
Mm-hmm.
but Ashton Genty's great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I've had a
I
lot
mean,
of problems
one
betting his
player does
under.
not a team make, right? Like, and
Right.
that's the fun part about all of the things with college football. It's like adjusting for your strength of schedule. It is not apples to apples, especially in this new world of the Big Ten, whatever that means anymore. Like all of these straight, like how important is recent form? Like how many, I mean, this is such a small season. Such a short, you and I, we talk about the NFL all the time. And, you also talk about college. Like what is the kind of leveling off? Like what's recent form?
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, it's a mathematical question, Cynthia, because like you just try some parameters and how much you weight recency, and you look
Yep.
at ones that are the most predictive, and that's what I use in my member college football model. Also, like not everything applies to every single team, right? And so
Right.
part of it is that like, yeah, I think Oregon's probably a little bit high, right?
Mhm.
The bigger question is a team like Indiana that started out, had no expectations this preseason. Kirk Cignetti has come in and they've been phenomenal. Look, some of that is noise, right? But there's also some signal in there. And even I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much of it's signal or noise. I'm betting a little bit more on signal. I do like them. I don't think they necessarily win at Notre Dame, but I think that's a close game. But
I mean, okay, so great. So let's go with like these first round. We love the Penn State pick. Is there anything else for this first round that we should be focusing on or watching for, or just some good value? Because remember, and I was going to say before, and when something is 17% in your model and the market's plus 550 or whatever, something like that, like there's a lot
right,
of value there. Like the delta
right,
between that, you're buying a really good stock. I mean, it could go to zero, of course, but you're buying a really
sure.
good potential for upside. So, is there anything like that in this week's round?
In the first round, yeah, I mean for sure Penn State side I like, and I think Indiana side is a little bit interesting too. A lot of other people think this line of 7.5 is about fair, and again, my model says it should be more like 3.5. But am I over? Is my model saying giving Indiana a little bit too much credit for what they've done this season? Right? Is Curtis Rourke really more of a MAC quarterback than a college football playoff quarterback? We won't know until tonight. And so I think there's enough good data on Indiana. Basically a lot of these models, right? Like it's not just they've clearly put the numbers up on the scoreboard, but
Right.
Indiana's really been strong in terms of the underlying metrics as well. When I look at things like success rate, when I look at things like yards per play, they've just been annihilating teams, and that is good. That is what kind of drives their rating in my models. So could it all blow up? Sure. Could Indiana be like my most overrated team preseason 2025? It could be. It could be.
Well, I mean,
But
a lot of it, right, is like you only get to play your schedule and we can only adjust so much. So, I
right.
mean, you're just looking for incremental differences. And these, percentage points, 24 and 17 doesn't sound that different. It is massively different. I will
Yep.
reiterate that. That is massively different. So, we're
Yep.
going to be following Penn State for sure. Now, I know and I love all the stuff you do for, now I don't want to give anything away because it's not Saturday yet, and I don't want to like, your newsletter is amazing. So I want everyone to sign up for your newsletter at the Power Rank, like thepowerrank.com. Like it's all there. But I need to know, do you have an NFL pick for us for week 16 that you really love?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I really love it, but I do think there's value here, right? We talked
Mm-hmm.
about college football about how you kind of react pretty strongly to recent form,
Mm-hmm.
both in terms of data from the games. I also use market data. In the NFL, that's really not the case. You get some massive regression to the mean. I tend to lean on season averages more. I mean, for example, like we know what Patrick Mahomes can do, right? Like, it's not a stretch to say when they go through a bad funk that they'll probably bounce back to where they've been in the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid era. The same thing goes for Buffalo right now. Josh Allen has been just incredible over, particularly the last three halves of football, but he's had a really good stretch. And it's interesting, it hasn't all been to Amari Cooper, right? Like he's been running, he's been throwing to his running backs.
Khalil
Um,
Shakir's been massive. I mean, those
he
underneath
has been,
throws to Khalil Shakir have been ridiculous.
and it's look, I love Josh Allen. I think he's a super talented quarterback. I cheer for the guy. But we know that this type of performance is just not sustainable in the modern NFL. And uh, similar. I think what the Lions were doing to some teams, right? I don't know what was the point spread, like 14 against Jacksonville, and they easily covered. That's
Yep.
the type of things they were doing. That offense has come back to earth a little bit. Um, when you look at that Buffalo team, or when I look at that Buffalo team, I think what Allen is doing is really kind of masking some of their problems on defense. This is a defense that I had high expectations of coming into the season, and they haven't been good. They're below average when I look at my numbers. Christian Benford has been great in the secondary, but everyone else has kind of sucked this year when you look at PFF grades. They've just, I mean, they've been as bad as Josh Allen has been good the last two games.
Which is really saying something, because Josh Allen has been
Right,
otherworldly. Like, this is when the
right.
votes go on for MVP. It'd be hard for me to see anyone else being taken, because
No,
in the time
yeah,
when, it's a lot of times it's performance when people are voting.
right.
So
Exactly. So, anyways, I think the market for Buffalo is kind of taking a college type trend where you follow the momentum, and I just don't think that really applies in the NFL. You can actually get they have New England at home, and look, New England's not a good football team, but there are actually some reasons to think that they can keep this close. Drake May has been, I think, very good for a rookie. Some of his interception numbers have been bad, but some of the underlying work that I do suggest that there's a little bit of bad luck in that. Don't want to make too much of it because we only have a couple hundred pass attempts to look at.
your book on interceptions, insane. So good. Like, because there's a lot of randomness.
Thank
There's
you.
a lot of, that's a great book, a great read. I mean, if you're a person who loves data like you and I, like, that is a great read. Great Christmas
Thanks,
present too,
appreciate it. Right. And then yeah, so there's some reasons. There's some reasons for New England, but like, I mean, I think the main thing is like I just can't get to 2 touchdowns, and you
Right.
can
I was going
grab.
to say, just to kind of remind everyone, the spread is 14 points. So it's a
Yeah,
full 2 touchdown spread at home
yeah,
in Buffalo. That's a big line. It's the biggest line of the entire week.
yeah. It's a big line, and you can actually I actually just bet it plus 14.5 on FanDuel. You can get it from
Oh,
minus
the hook
120.
too,
I would.
right? Like, that's even
Yeah,
bigger.
it's even bigger. It's even bigger. So FanDuel likes to take a stand sometimes, and sometimes it's worth it to go the other way. So that's an NFL game I like this week.
Nice. And just looking into the playoffs, what, like, just, again, I'm throwing you a curveball here, but ultimately, like, Super Bowl wise, we're thinking about, I mean, the AFC is all but, I mean, the order isn't necessarily set, but it's going to be very hard for any of the teams who are not currently slated to be in the playoffs to make it to the playoffs unless something wild happens with the Chargers or the Broncos, really. But, do you have any kind of playoff, or, Super Bowl, who do you think's most likely to end up there, especially now with 16 defensive players for the Lions on IR and
Yeah,
Philadelphia having a cakewalk? This could be Philadelphia's, if it plays out the way I have it right now, this could be
right.
Philadelphia's last away game until the Super Bowl. What?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not exactly playing three division opponents heading towards the end here is not exactly the world's
Three
hardest
division
thing.
opponents in the NFC East, not
Right.
just.
Right. Sorry.
It's not
A
like they're
very
playing in the
proper
North or
clarification. Very proper clarification because the Bears would have the opposite problem. Yeah, no, I again, you bring up all the salient points. I don't really know who's going to win the Super Bowl. The Lions look so good for a while, but now, I mean, just with all those injuries, you at some point, I looked at their rush numbers and they're like, yeah, they're doing pretty good with all those injuries to the front seven. And then last week happened, and it's kind of more what you expect when you have legitimately. I think heading in the next week, they may have two starters in their front seven from week one. So yeah, I mean, they're
Everything's
seriously
fine.
contender. What?
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. That's what Dan Campbell will tell you. We'll see. We'll see. And then Philly, it's the drama there has been interesting. I love what they've done on the defensive side of the ball. That unit is really good. Saquon's been really good. And if Jalen Hurts can just be a little bit better than NFL average throwing the ball, they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender as well. I feel like we're kind of headed towards a Buffalo, Kansas City rematch in the AFC, and Buffalo's feeling really good, but you still got to beat Kansas City, probably at Arrowhead. I think that's gonna be tough as always. So yeah, a lot of drama. I mean, as always with every year, no favorite in the NFL. Well, I mean there are favorites, but like it's
Right.
going to be competitive and it's going to be good as it always is.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna, already ask you, because your March Madness stuff is incredible as well. if you'll come back, I'm going to slate it
Yeah.
now. I'm doing this on camera because, it's peer pressure, which just means I'm more likely for you to say yes. But, you don't have to if you don't want to. But,
Yeah,
we
would
will
love
look
to. Would love
forward
to come
to,
back in
yeah, we'll look forward to
in
keep
March.
talking. And you can find Ed at the Power Rank on X, thepowerrank.com. Sign up for the newsletter. The five Nugget Saturday is well worth your time. It is an excellent newsletter. And, I'm going to ask you this because you said the word, and the M word, between data scientists is always a funny question. The M word being, momentum. What's your stance? We need to go on the record for what your stance on momentum is.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it a little bit. I mean, it's different between college and the NFL. And this is something that Chris Andrews told me, the sports book director at the South Point, and I believe it to be true in my experience in the sports betting world. You can follow momentum in college football, and you should a lot of the time, but it'll kill you in the NFL. So that's my official mathematical opinion on that.
I mean, that's as good as it gets right there. I am so grateful for your time. Thank you for coming to hang out with us. And I'm going to take you up on the coming back for March Madness because you're
All right, so
incredible. Everyone sign up again at the Power Rank on X, thepowerrank.com. If I missed anything, just let me know.
no, thank you so much, Cynthia, for having me on. This was super fun, and look forward to doing it again soon.
And I love all the Penn State takes. And I know we have Penn State fans that listen to this, so they're going to love that too. And I'm
There
going
we
to
go.
send it to James Franklin because he loves it too. He reads everything. So he saw that tweet too.
Just mention that. Just mention that I'm in Ann Arbor. So I actually met Franklin once.
He's
Super,
hilarious.
super kind. And like I asked him about, like, I don't remember the details, but I asked him about a fourth down decision that he made, and he just so thoughtful about, like, well, I actually didn't think of this one thing, and yeah.
I
So
love people who admit what they like don't know or
yeah,
what they were missing, right? Like, oh, I didn't think about this. Now I would have. Because remember, it's in a heat of a moment. That decision's difficult to make, right? Neutral
yep,
brain, easy for all of us at home thinking about it. You just saw your, right tackle get clobbered and blah, blah, like all these things happen and it's
yep.
not a neutral. Anyway, so I appreciate that. And I love your official stance on momentum. That makes me very happy. Thank you, Ed.